So to tell you about Ronald, he's a very powerful man with a very simple profile. I'm sure the profile was shared earlier. Ronald is a statistician from Makerere University. He also holds Masters of Science in Development Management, that is from London School of Economics and Political Science. Ronald is the team leader at Geuka Africa Limited. Ronald, you tell us more about Geuka and what you do. I hope I've pronounced it well. Ronald is a financial literacy coach and a business development professional who has provided business management, financial literacy, and management training to individuals, both at a small scale, at SME level, and medium enterprise level for over 10 years. Ronald is a team leader at his company, Geuka Africa Limited, an e-learning personal improvement education platform and a consultancy firm. Ronald is currently the Director of Research, Innovation and Learning at Enterprise Uganda. Previously, he worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers Uganda as an auditor. Ronald is passionate about leadership and empowering people to fulfill their potential. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very privileged to have Ronald. Ronald, you're most welcome. I hope you can add a little more, a lot more to what I have shared about you. We are anticipating to hear from you, and we'll be able to take you through a Q&A later on after your presentation. We have a whole almost 1.5 hours. We've not gotten this in a long time. A company giving us almost an hour plus to speak to people. So we shall utilize them, and we shall also allow them to ask questions so that we support them in all angles. Ronald, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Just confirm whether you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you, and I can also see your screen. I believe everybody else can.
Super. I'll briefly just turn on my camera so that people see who is speaking. I'm very excited to be on the call today, and as Aisha said, it's just an honor to share with those of you in this very noble profession, partly because of the work you do. Aisha, I think, reiterated the silent job which you do to make sure that we are all healthy, and it's just amazing to just come and give back to you today as we talk about personal finance. It's also particular that that's who I am. My bandwidth is not very good. I'm out of town, but I'll just turn off my camera. I hope my voice can come out clearly. Yeah, and certainly it's also an honor because I've seen a couple of familiar faces. I think Aisha, my claim to fame is that I was in the same class with Dr. Andrew Chintu. I certainly took biology more seriously than I did. I ended up in this, but Doctor, it's nice to see you, and we are very proud of the work you do. I see a number of other individuals who we have engaged with. Thank you so much for the work you do. So today, our conversation is about really looking beyond our careers and how can we make the most of our professional savings. And I think Aisha has ably set out, kind of highlighted the challenge with your profession. It's one where you don't choose the time when you have to work. You don't choose the time when you are needed, and it is that, as she said, it makes your career quite unique. It makes the work you do quite unique. But however, we also know that when it comes to personal finance, we all think about it because we look back and say, okay, I'm working so hard, but what do I have to show for it? And that becomes very close to our hearts. And really, it is those ideas that cause us to kind of come together and reflect. So we want to thank you for, as an association, for really saying this is something we need converse about in our unique setting in the profession which you do. Because I imagine that the 20 or so who are on the call, you're the ones who best understand how challenging your space is, what things you can or you can't do. I mean, I'm currently in a place called I think Chazanga, and I think about the fact that depending on where your station is, you may find that for a whole year you have had to operate in the same locality. Means there are opportunities which you possibly don't even get to see. And as your patients, we don't possibly even allow you to see them because of the pressures that come with your work. So I think from the conversation with Aisha, that was my conclusion. That's where the topic was born. It was born in that realization that actually there is something unique with our situation as those who are in this profession. And that uniqueness means that as we talk about professional savings, we talk about them with the knowledge that we are in this unique setting. So I will possibly come at this from that perspective. However, I thought the topic you chose was also very interesting because you mentioned the word which in personal finance is used, and it's a big debate. Is it helpful? Is it not? But this word called saving, it's one of the ones which is unique. And many times when you, even if you want to listen to something inspiring, it's about how can you make more money? How can you grow the money and it explodes? But generally, saving is one of those, actually, if they say, if people tell you you are part of a savings group, chances are very high that you think about that village women's group, which is coming together to save. But you don't think about people who are on top of their careers coming together to do this boring thing called savings. So it's a very unique, and I thought when I read the topic, I thought that was actually quite fascinating, that you chose to talk about professional savings. You need to say, how can we be able to invest? But I imagine that's what you mean. But ideally, this word savings, bringing it to the fore, I think that it's a powerful thing. I've had the opportunity to spend the better part of the last 12 or 13 years working closely with small and medium businesses in this country, in Uganda. So I've had the opportunity to travel all around the country. Actually, just today we're coming from Kabale, and we had a bit of work also in Barra. But ideally, one of the things which I see very clearly is that every time the word savings is mentioned, usually the face which comes out is a face of a woman, and not just a woman, but a woman in the village. Those are the people who have the burden of saving. The rest of us, we have to do more serious things. Things like, things like investing, like boosting our incomes. But saving is kind of relegated to the fore. Now, you remember you were lucky you were what was called essential workers during the COVID period. But for those of us who were not essential workers, we had to sit at home and reflect on the idea that actually there is no place we have saved. I mean, those first couple of weeks, people started calling out NSSF and they were saying, you know what, NSSF, why don't you give us our money? And the reason why they were doing that was very simple. It was because that was the only place where they had money. You look around and say, where is it? But the truth is, that message which comes every month to show you what you have as NSSF is the only place where you seem to have money. So I want to put that into context. Allow me to start. I hope you can see my slides and that they're moving. I want to start off with that question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your financial health? Now, your professionals, medical professionals, you know how to assess our health. Are we in good shape? When we come for possibly an annual checkup, you will assess us. However, I want to assess your financial health. Now, I'm going to tell you how to assess. This is a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is you're absolutely financially healthy. Everything in your personal finance is in order. Seems like things fall in place. When you go to pray to your God, one of the things it's the last thing you pray about. Pray about his provision. That is a small detail. God has already provided. Seems like everything is in order. One is that you're in financial disarray. Things seem to be tough. School fees are tough. Rent is tough. Repairing the car is tough. Asking about the future finances is tough. Everything seems tough. That is one. It's a disarray. Where would you score yourself? I want you to go to the chat box quickly and just put a number there. You can say, I feel like I'm a 1. I feel like I'm a 2. I feel like I'm a 10. Put a number there. So
Welcome back, Ronald. We lost you earlier. Yeah.
I think I got muted, or I got muted there a bit. Great. Thank you. So a number of there's a lot of feedback that has come in the chat box. I hope you look at the scores which we are making. I see Dr. Kiza here is a 4, Dr. Ham, Dr. Kemigisa, Dr. Arthur, Dr. Andrew. Great. I think the numbers are coming through. But I want to change this question slightly to answer a different question. Same question, but to answer it different. The question which I want to address is, assuming this question was asked in the perspective of, I asked this question to your brother, the one who you sent 20K today, the one who you sent 50K today, the cousin who you support. If the question was to that person and I asked them, how would you score a doctor? I want you to go to the chat box and answer. What would they say? How would they score your financial health? The people watching from a distance, what would they say about your financial health? How would they score you? Not you. This is the cousin you support, the guy who calls you in the village, the neighbor who knows you go to work every day. What score would they give? Please go to the chat box again and put the score there. I want to just kind of share on this subject. I think we have just a few minutes, but I'll give a couple of people. We see that there is a difference between the evidence which you have as an individual in your personal finances versus the evidence of us who are watching you. I just wanted someone to comment, what causes that difference? Cornelius, please go ahead and unmute. I saw you unmute. Fiona, can everyone unmute and speak? I don't think there are very many on the call.
Yeah, I was saying.
Yes, and someone can unmute.
Okay, thank you, Cornelius. Cornelius, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was saying, I think sometimes appearances can be deceiving. Yeah, so that's what I think.
So they can be the image,
Yes.
what people see. Anyone else wants to contribute to that?
Ronald,
Yes,
I
Fiona.
think sometimes it's also just stereotyping, like just because I'm a doctor, that's enough for someone to assume I'm an 8 or 10.
Yeah, I mean, for those of us who watch you from the outside, we can't understand how a doctor cannot be okay. I mean, it is, and as you have rightly put it, it could be a stereotype, but that's what society has set out. Now, I wanted us to think about this from the perspective of, we need to understand that a lot of our personal finances is a battle between what we believe is true and what everyone else believes is true. And you need to understand that when it comes to your personal finances, it's possible to live life without ever having faced what exactly the truth is for you as an individual. And it's very simple for us to kind of ask ourselves, are we walking from the perspective of what people see, or are we walking from the perspective of what we know is true? Now, friends, I would like to really start there and say that in personal finances, you need to ask yourself, what exactly is my truth? And it brings me to what the goal is. The goal of personal finances, the goal of saving, the goal of investing, at the very least, and this is the most basic of goals, one of the most basic goals is this thing called financial independence. It is the status of having enough income to pay one's living expenses for the rest of one's life without having to be employed or dependent on others. Friends, this definition here, I hope we can capture it and reflect on it and meditate on it. Because when you think about your work life, at the very least, you are saying, one of these days, I want to at least achieve this thing called financial independence. Now, some people on the call may have achieved it already. The truth is, they can maintain exactly the same quality of life, even though they can't practice their trade. You are in a very unique and highly demanded trade. And you can argue that for the rest of my life, I envisage that I should be able to practice my trade. I should be able to make money out of the skill which I have. However, you need to ask yourself, assuming you can't practice your trade, assuming you have an illness which doesn't enable you to practice your trade, but you're still alive. Assuming you reach a day and you say, you know what, I want to spend 3 years without having to work, but to do the rest of the things, to live. Now, friends, on this definition, I was once doing this session for a financial institution. So there was a driver in that financial institution. And he kind of, after I'd done the session, he came to me and said, you know what, Ronald, I think the truth is I am financially independent. I said, explain it to me. Said, you know, I earn 600,000 shillings per month. I said, oh, that's exciting. 600 shillings per month. Says, I have a family and I have 2 children, a wife and 2 children. I said, oh, exciting stuff. So he said, why do you think you're financially independent? He told me, you know, I have managed to build 5 Mizigo. 5 Mizigo. I hope everyone on the call knows what a Mizigo is. That is a 1-bedroom, a 1-bedroom house, or a 1-room house, not even 1-bedroom house, a 1-room house. So he had a Mizigo with a sitting room and bedroom. He had built 5 of them. 4 of them he was renting out. 1 of them he was living with his family. It was done L form. The one where he was living was slightly bigger than the rest. The 4, he was able to get rent of 150,000 shillings per month. So when you think about what he had managed to achieve, he had managed to actually be able to earn 150,000 shillings times 4, which is equivalent to 600,000 shillings. 150,000 shillings times 4 is equivalent to 600,000 shillings, which was exactly the same amount he was earning in the bank as a driver. So he had managed to equate what some people call his passive income to his active income, which he gets from the bank. Now, friends, his children are not going to Kampala parents. They're not. They're not in the top schools, but they are going to school. But he can meet this definition. He has enough income to pay his expenses for the rest of his life without having to be employed or dependent on others. Now, friends, it's possible that he can achieve financial independence before the MD of the bank who he drives. Because for the MD to pull it off, The MD takes home 30 million shillings. For him to do what his driver has managed to do, he also needs to build 30 apartments, find 30 Ugandans who can pay him 1 million each, assuming he chooses real estate. And many times you'll find he has been unable to do that. So friends, as we reflect on saving, I want you to, at the back of your mind, kind of chew this idea of financial independence, because it is a powerful, powerful goal. Now let's move. I'm going to talk about just 3 things, then we'll get into our discussion. The first thing is to ask, do you have the savings? Friends, the topic which I was given presupposes that you have the savings. That was its idea. It presupposed that you have the savings. It said that what can you do with your personal savings? Now, friends, with the exception of these statutory savings, which you have to put in NSSF, I want you to reflect on the question, do the savings exist? If someone called you today and he told you that, by the way, there is a plot which has become available in your neighborhood, the plot is going at a giveaway price of 30 million. You know the market price is 40 million, but the plot is going at a giveaway price of 30 million. What do you do? How quickly can you activate? Is the 5 million there to say, you know what, let me deposit as I do the verification? Let me show commitment and show interest. So, do you have the savings? The first question you need to ask yourself is, are the savings there? Because friends, personal finance is 80% behavior and only 10% head knowledge. What does this mean? It means that when it comes to personal finance, even though both of us are working in the same place, even though both of us are getting the same salary, we behave with it differently. We might both know that saving is a good idea, but the truth is we behave completely differently. And that's why I would like to challenge you. That's why I would like to persuade you to say that you need to reflect on other savings there. NSSF takes 5% of your salary. Your employer, if you have an employer who contributes 10%. That's a total of 15%. But of your salary, it's 5%. The fundamental question we need to ask is, of what is left, the 95%, how much do you drive into savings? Even before you debate what to do with them. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But you'll notice that at the heart of the challenge is that most of the savings actually don't exist. They are not there. They are not there. As a country, our savings rates have been revolving around 12, 13%. But what's even more fascinating is the fact that actually saving rates are not improving with improvement of income. People don't necessarily save more because they have more income. Actually, the people who earn high incomes sometimes feel like they have no responsibility to save because the next paycheck is coming. So you need to ask yourself, do the savings exist? And if they don't, I would like to persuade you that on the question of whether the savings are there, the first thing is to say, I need to start the savings. The next thing is to say, can I boost the income? Can I be able to grow the income which I am earning? And why I think it's important to understand this is because if you are not delivering an income which allows you to put aside some savings, many times it feels like you are rowing the boat, but you are just rowing it for the master. You do everything possible, but it seems like the landlord is happy, Total is happy,
the cafe Javas is happy, the school where your child goes is happy, apart from you who has made the money. So you need to ask yourself, in the income I have I put aside a bit of money to be able to grow? And here I'm going to make a small rejoinder on income. And why I mention it here is because I think it's very important to understand that one thing which is shared in common in all professions is that everyone who is excellent at what they do is overpaid. Everyone who is excellent. And this is very critical. If you are the best footballer like Messi, you are overpaid. If you are like Uncle Mo, who is a comedian, you are still overpaid. If you are excellent at what you do. Now, one of the things you can actually do for yourself in your profession is to be excellent. Being excellent is a financial literacy strategy. It's an opportunity for you to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that when I serve others, they feel a big urge to say thank you with big paychecks. And I'll give an illustration here of the guy in the middle. The guy in the middle is called Dr. Mitch. Dr. Mitch is one of the leading hosts of events in the country. So at Enterprise Uganda, about 2015, we were looking for one of the best hosts. So we settled on this guy we settled on 3 people. We settled on Dr. Mitch. I was the coordinator. I had Dr. Mitch's contact. I called him up. He said, you know what, Ronald, I've heard what you want to do. I will be able to be there for the event. I said, great, that's perfect. So after I had asked him to do the event, I asked him how much will it be. He told me it would be 5. I asked him 5 what? He said 5 million. Told him, Dr. Mitch, you're coming at 6. And by about 10, you will have finished. How do you take 5 million? He said, that's exactly what it will be. So I went back to my boss. My boss is a guy called Ochichi. I told Ochichi, you know what, Ochichi? Dr. Mitch is coming, but he wants 5 million. Ochichi picked up the phone, talked to Mitch for about 15 minutes. After that, he put down the phone and he said, you know what, Ronald? I am going to give Dr. Mitch 5 million shillings. I told him, Mr. Chichi, it's 5 million shillings. Now you need to understand why it was particularly painful for me as an individual. It was painful because I was working for a whole month at that time and I wasn't getting 5 million shillings. And this is about 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. But this African was getting the money in one evening. And something came to me, and one of the biggest lessons for me in that whole experience, because I am the one who got the check and I am the one who delivered it to Dr. Mitch. But my biggest lesson there was that if you are the best at what you do, you will always be overpaid. If you are the best at what you do, you will always be overpaid. So friends, in the profession you have chosen, in the niche area you have chosen, make sure that you are excellent. It is your responsibility. Excellence is your responsibility because excellence is very good for your personal finances. If you do mediocre, and for you, I think you don't even have the luxury of doing a mediocre job, because if you do, things go very bad. But ideally, excellence is one of the ways you can boost income. So let me quickly turn to what can your savings do. So I asked the question, do you have the savings? And I've talked about how we can boost them. But now I want to talk about those who have savings. What can your savings do? There are particularly 2 things which savings can do. Number one, savings can be very helpful in terms of emergencies. And the other second thing is savings are very helpful for investments. Now, friends, both these savings are important. And I want to challenge you about first, the savings for emergencies. What are savings for emergencies? This is money which you kind of get together for what they call ebigwa tebikozeeki tebiraze in Luganda. Things which you did not prepare for. And friends, they are always coming. An entire industry has been developed around savings for emergencies. This industry is called the insurance industry. The one concept or one idea behind the insurance industry is saving for emergencies. So we are told that you should have in your emergency fund 3 to 6 months of your salary should be in your emergency fund. That means that if your annual expenses or your annual salary, the money which you spend every month, is let's say 5 million shillings, your emergency fund should conservatively be about 30 million shillings. That's the purpose of unit trusts. If you want a place to keep them, a unit trust would be perfect. Now, friends, I want you to reflect on this for a moment. Before we even talk about savings for investments and growing and multiplying the money, the first thing is to create a cushion so that everything is not a crisis. Now, I do understand that many people will say, you don't even understand. I don't even have 1 month of my salary. Now, I want to challenge you who are on the call, and I hope that this challenge can be received. For those of us who have attended this session today, I want to challenge you that this next month, if the emergency fund doesn't exist, call up an agent from one of the unit trusts, UAP. Now, I was saying that the recommendation is 3 to 6 months in an emergency fund. But I want to challenge those of us on a call. At least have 1 month of your salary in an emergency fund. The purpose of the emergency fund is not for growth. It is not for multiplication of money, but it is saving to make sure you mitigate emergencies. So really what we are attempting to do here is to say that at least I have 1 month of my salary. In case anything happens, I can be able to go through the month. Now, when you think about an emergency fund, it's about saying that you allow your salary to meet another one. The salary of June should meet the salary of July. And you say, when the salary of July comes, then I take the salary of June. Many of us live right at the edge. But you'll find that if you understand the power of an emergency fund, it cushions you. It takes away a lot of the worry, a lot of the pressure. A lot of the pressure which many of us have financially is really driven by the fact that sometimes you are waking up in the morning and even fuel, you don't know where to get it. And you need that cash. Have you ever promised someone to give him 50,000 shillings? And after 2 minutes, he calls you back and he asks you, have you sent it? It means he's right at the edge. He's kind of right next to crisis. So the idea here is that you should have savings for emergencies. Second bit is savings for investments. And here there are a couple of ideas which I want to front, then we can get into a conversation. Idea one is your circle. I do know that as an association, you made, I'm not very sure, Fiona, whether you have a circle. But I do know that the broader medical fraternity has a circle. Fiona, do you have a circle as an association?
I can answer that. Not yet.
Not yet. But I know that you have the Uganda Medical Association circle, which I believe that all of you have an opportunity to be able to join. Now, I would like to challenge you. Every time the word circle is mentioned, it seems to unfortunately be associated with poverty. So you think about circles, you think about people in villages, but I want to suggest to you that the closest you can ever get to owning your own bank where you borrow is by being an active member of a circle. So as a saver, when you save, even though you were to borrow, the money which you borrow, all the interest you pay, a part of it, all the interest goes to your circle, but a part of it comes back to you as a return. So I want to challenge you, colleagues. Are you a member of a circle? Because we need to understand that circles have moved on. I'm a proud member of a circle. I belong to a circle called FIC Circle. It's called Franciscan Investment Cooperative. And this circle which I belong to has been my primary source of financial services for the last 11 years. Even currently, I'm looking after a facility from that circle. But the circle has allowed me to own the bank. Because friends, if you are borrowing and all the money you are borrowing from a bank, you are not the owner. And you need to remember that. And as I talk about later, you'll notice that one of your biggest threats to your savings is actually debt. So I put it to you that in our environment here, one of the tools that can work, you have the Uganda Medical Association circle. Consider it. Some of you have circles in the workplaces which you are. Consider them. Don't look at them as places where people who are suffering have to be. Circles can do very big things. The biggest loan my circle lent out this last financial year was in the excess of 800 million shillings. That was our biggest loan. It's not the biggest in the country, but it's big where I am standing. And it is lent out by my bank. So I would like to challenge you. Consider becoming a member of a circle. Next, we have the treasury bills, the bonds, the unit trusts. I'm going to talk about each quickly. I talked about unit trusts in the context of an investment of saving for emergencies. However, a unit trust is one of the tools, and I think also the taxman has been a bit kind to it of recent, and he hasn't entered it. But these things offered by Britam, UAP, and ISEA, and all the other insurance firms which offer them, make use of them. They will return to you a good 10-11%. And friends, 10-11% is actually a better return than real estate. Our average return in real estate in our country is about 8%. So if you are saying that every month, let me have 500,000, a million, which I put on my interest, that money keeps growing. And if you were to stretch it and you consider a treasury bill or a bond, you have a right to go to your bank, who most likely is a primary dealer with the central bank, and you say, I want to open up an account to be able to buy a bond. Friends, your government, even in the budget which is being read next week, your government is planning to borrow from Ugandans, and it is going to give them good returns for that borrowing. Last year, I think early this year, rather late last year, there was a bond which came out at 17.5%. And friends, you need to understand that when government is paying, those of you who are in the public service, these are the priorities of government. The first priority of government is to repay debt. It's priority number one. They repay debt. So if government has borrowed from you, our government hasn't defaulted for over 50 years. It even has nothing to do with just the current government. All governments pay the debts, but you have a right and an opportunity to say, I want to engage and be able to get a treasury bill and a bond. So friends, if you are looking for places where you say, my schedule can't allow me, you have some 10 million, participate in the bond market. Go and talk to your bank. They will give you a financial advisor. And you say, I want to specifically participate in the treasury bills and the bonds. Actually, that's where the unit trust put most of their money. Even NSSF, that's where it invests to give you the good return. But you can be able to participate in it. So today, one of the actions you can take is I need to approach my bank and see, how can I be able to get a bill? How can I be able to get a bond? And friends, don't for a moment think that I need big money. 100,000, they'll give you what you have for it. And you can be able to participate. You can be able to say, I am in there. So by way of action, where we can be able to put the money, that's another place to consider. Another one which we are passionate about is real estate. I'll say this about real estate. Real estate is by far one of the oldest creators of wealth. And quite honestly, even in our country, it's a creator of wealth. But you need to understand that real estate can also be very deceptive. First of all, if you are buying a plot of land, have you actually bought it? Have you done the due diligence? Because nothing is as bad as spending 30 million on a plot which 4 people have titles for. So you need to make sure you have hedged the risk. Then you need to ask yourself, what spectrum am I going to go into? I see so many apartment buildings coming up. Do the math on the apartment building. Is it actually returning as it should? If you sink $1 billion in an apartment building, is it honestly giving you have sunk $1 billion. Is it giving you 100 million every year? Because that's what the treasury bill would give you, give or take. Actually, the bond may give you up to about 140 million. So ask yourself as you enter real estate. Personally, I'm quite vested in real estate. I like real estate. It kind of warms my heart. But it's one of the things which you need to be very careful about as you enter. It's a good vehicle. It's a vehicle which, if done right, I encourage you that when you are doing real estate, make sure you do the due diligence. Get into the communities that can make real estate work. Sometimes it is making sure that you understand who are the people who are in that ecosystem of real estate, the brokers who buy the land, the brokers who sell the land. Who are they? Get into that real estate, that ecosystem. And sometimes it is better to do together. I know that, for example, the cooperative where I belong, FIC, which I told you about, we buy big chunks of land and then we sell them to members. But when I buy a plot from my cooperative, they have already done that due diligence for me. That allows me to be able to grow. Some people have said, do the business. Business, and we could have a whole conversation on business. But just a couple of weeks ago, I've been going through a book by one of what I would call one of our really successful entrepreneurs in the country. He wrote a book called Double Your Money, Mr. Aga Sekalala Sr. And in this book, he said, when it comes to business in this country, in Uganda, for some reason, you have to be around. And he said, I understand that in other modern economies, you can hire people, but in this country of ours, it appears you need to be around. And for those of you who have ventured into it, you know that he may actually have stumbled on something true. There are a few outliers, but by and large, business is tough. It's one of the toughest ways to invest because it demands of you. At Enterprise Uganda, we work daily with businesses, but there are people who are even around, but the math is not tied. So we need to understand that is the risk which that comes with. Allow me to close with what is threatening your savings. Yes, we have talked about where you can put them, but what is threatening them? I'm going to talk about 4 ideas, then I'll wrap up. Number 1 is debt. One of the biggest challenges to your savings is debt. And you need to understand that debt has 2 problems. It could be that you are lending to people who are not going to pay back. It could be you are borrowing at rates which are astronomical. Some people have borrowed at 10% per month, 20% per month. What business are you doing? Even traders in Chikubo struggle to pull off those margins. However, you find that there is a whole big ecosystem of money lenders. And it is a sign that people haven't appreciated that one of the greatest threats to your income, one of the greatest threats to your savings is actually debt. So debt usually doesn't start from the bank. It doesn't start from the circle. It doesn't start from the microfinance. Even doesn't start from the money lender. Debt often starts from family and friends. It starts from the workplace. It starts from colleagues. You start borrowing from colleagues. We are very senior specialists. And you find that sometimes you catch yourself, you have actually borrowed from the residence nurse. You have borrowed, you have taken some 100, you have taken some 200, and you haven't paid it back. And it's causing reputational risk. Friends, I want to submit that debt from friends and family seems like it's the cheapest debt, but it's actually the most expensive because it is underwritten, it is secured by trust. So that becomes a challenge. Number two, I mean, this is an article which came out just last month. And the article said, this is April 15th of 2024. 70% of Ugandans survive on borrowing. Friends, the greatest threat to our savings is actually debt. And one of the fastest ways you can empower yourself to be able to save is by getting out of debt. So you need to understand that debt is a threat. Number two is this idea that you are going to be God in your family. Some people call it black tax. Friends, saving can be very difficult if you take the position of God in your family. Doctor, you can't solve all problems. You are not God. Don't position yourself that way. Make a budget. Say, this is what I need to share with my family. And once it's gone, that's it. So that it allows you to be able to release some savings. Otherwise, savings can be impossible. Friends, every time you play God, you won't be able to say that you have the capacity to keep. Most people, when you talk to them, they say, I feel like I make the money, but it all disappears. But part of it is attributed black tax. Now, it is very good to give to your family. It's very good to share. But you are not God. You can't solve all problems. Solve according to a budget. Number three is what they call the gambler mindset. Every time you hear sure deal, abnormal profit. Friends, the number of Ponzi schemes we have gone through, we can no longer count. I've just selected a few. 60 billion in football Ponzi scheme. This was called BLQ. It was done on the phone. 60 billion was lost. This is 2022. Still the same year, 1,500 Ugandans lose 10 billion in online scam in 3 months. Most recently, we heard about Capital Chicken and more and more and more. Friends, allow me to say that you are not, you need to understand that every time you hear sure deal, multiply money quickly, you know that that threatens your savings. Finally, it is the semi pandemic. This is the idea that you need to live up to your funds. I asked you earlier what we think about you, and we call you doctor. We call you Tata. We call you powerful names. You may even be 30, but we are calling you Muzei already. Friends, don't get into the temptation of pleasing the masses. The moment you start saying you get this infection called simi, and friends, peer pressure is not for teenagers. Peer pressure is most apparent amongst adults. I mean, you have another specialist, he comes and he packs a brand new Prado. You will start feeling bad about your vehicle. So why am I not doing this right? And usually there is a bank very close to you saying, just sign this document. And also the Prado will be yours. You need to fight back and not allow the status burden to hold you. Finally, and this is for the people who are more senior, economic outpatient. This is when you look after your children way into their adulthood. You pay the first degree. Then you pay for them to do a master's. Then they tell you they want to do a certificate, you pay it. Then they tell you they want to get married, you do the wedding. Then they have children, then you take them to school. You are giving something called economic outpatient. This is not my concept. It's a concept by a guy called Stanley and Danko. They documented it in a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And they argue that one of the greatest threats to your savings is actually this idea that you are going to look after the children way into their adulthood. Friends, you have to prepare the children to be released into the world. And it can be tough as a parent, but if it's not done, it threatens your capacity to save and grow. Thank you so much. I'll stop there for now, and I'll hand back to you.